Hey everyone, this is HighZealot here and welcome to E-5 for the Spring 2016 event. So, the boss is an installation type boss, which is why I'm bringing on WG-42 rockets and Type 3 shells, and the actual route itself is fairly difficult, so I'm bringing on routing support and boss support to help kill the boss, make things quicker. And one thing to note is E-5 also includes the land-based support air squadrons that you can bring along, which you can send anywhere, though I find that it's arguably better to just put them all with full-on bombers and send it to the boss. You can have one of your air bases sent for defense, but honestly, it doesn't seem to make too much of a big difference, and you're better off just going for the high risk, high reward scenario of sending everything to the boss with full-on bombers, no fighters whatsoever. So you can see here, this route has 4 destroyers and 2 aviation cruisers. The big problem with this is that when you're using 4 destroyers, you have, well, the problem of 4 destroyers or they're not tanky, which is a problem. So you can see in my first time through, I send on fighters to Node I, because, well, I was thinking they'll help me against that node, because that is in air battle node. Well, more like you get bombed node, which I was thinking that should send affairs there should help me, but honestly, that node, not really a problem. If you're bringing on Akitsuki or any Akitsuki class, and for AA cutting, you'll probably get through that node just fine, and you'll probably S-rank it at least once or twice. So first node you can see here is a submarine node, which unfortunately support decides to always activate on the submarine node, even though they can't do anything here. So submarine node, you can get pretty much line abreast or echelon formation. Echelon formation is more accurate, but still not very accurate. Line abreast is even less accurate, so you know, standard submarine node. Hope you make it through, hope you don't get unlucky. Otherwise, you should be fine here. So after the submarine nodes, you can go 2 different routes. So with this route, which I'm using, I go to node C, which is in the south. If you don't, otherwise you would go to node B if you don't have the requirements. The requirements for going to node C is pretty much you can't use any carriers and you need at least 3 destroyers. And that is the ideal route because it's the faster and easier route to get to the boss. So, node C, well, that's also going to be a pretty standard node. You do have a few problems there, though that's mainly because you're going there with 4 destroyers, which means the heavy cruiser, as you're going to be about to see, can potentially hit someone in, or you may get torpedoed, and that could also do you in. So that's node C. It's pretty standard stuff. If you didn't go to node C because you're bringing some other raid that nobody really recommends, so go to node B. Node B is an air raid node, so you're gonna get bombed again. Then you go to node D, which has the Blue Eye Roll and 2 Nick class heavy cruisers, a 2 class light cruiser, and 2 destroyers. From node D, you can either go to node H or node F. So I'm pretty much just staying the alternate route right now if you're not paying attention. So the alternate route, so currently after the third node on the alternate route, node D, you go to node F, which is the southern path. If you have more than 2, if you have 2 destroyers or more, and you have less than or equal to a combined number of 3 battleships or standard carriers. Otherwise, you just go to node H. Node H is also another air raid node, and then you have node F, which is, well, even more blue-eyed woes. So for those routes, so this node F, you need at least 396 to get air superiority. So you can see the problem with this northern route right here. And then node K is not known. Node J is another air bombing route now. Air raid node, and from there you just go back onto the node L to the boss. So as you can see here, our air bases are being raided, so you might wanna. Wiki says you might wanna send someone to intercept, but honestly, even if you send someone to try and intercept the bombers, you're probably gonna still get screwed over, maybe. So I don't see much point over there. So I think you can just send everything on bombs and just bomb everything you can, hopefully. Especially if you have the box site to do it, because honestly, it's really not much fun. So you can see here, I put my fighters here, send my fighters here, but honestly, there's not a problem. It's a standard air raid node. You just shoot down the bombers, and then you're fine. So one thing to note here is that my aviation cruisers are carrying seaplane bombers, and that does get you air superiority and artillery spotting on node C and node L. So the second node with the heavy cruiser and light cruiser, and node L, which is the pre-boss node, which also gonna have, as you're gonna see, it's gonna contain some stuff there. Especially one specific target in node L is gonna be potentially a pain to deal with. So your seaplane bombers get you air superiority there, but they're just gonna get shut down and shot down in the boss and node L. And while it's supposedly possible to get partial on, pretty much deny the boss air superiority and just get partial on the boss, you do need to use your seaplane fighters, and they have to be like fully leveled for that to work. So node L, as you're gonna see, has 2 heavy cruisers, 1 net class, that was pretty much the elite, and then you got a 3 class, which is standard heavy cruiser. Then you got a light cruiser and 3 destroyers. So the heavy cruisers and the light cruiser are the biggest threat. Heavy cruisers can one-shot destroyer, net class can one-shot your aviation cruisers, and from there on, the destroyers and light cruisers, and well, all of them actually can torpedo someone in. So you hope your boss support, your routing support, can do some good work here. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, because the biggest threat is the heavy cruiser. So you can see that Ayanami got knocked out, so gotta go through this again. This time around, node L, not that big of a deal. So, but otherwise, so as you saw before, a few moments ago, the route I'm taking goes from node A to node C to node G to node I to node L to node M. So pretty much from node A, go south, then north, then this rest of the way is just one way. So the other route you can go is to go from node C south to node E. Node E itself is a node with 2 battleships, 2 Root class battleships, a light carrier, either a Shu class light cruiser or a Day class heavy cruiser, and then 2 destroyers, which is a pretty tough route on node. And where you get to node E is you have to have a battleship in your fleet, or you have a heavy cruiser and a torpedo cruiser combined of 2 or more. Going to node G is not exactly the specifics are known, but it's believed to be you need 4 destroyers and potentially 2 cruisers of some sort. Potentially you have to have aviation cruisers. Otherwise you get sent to node E, which is you don't really want to send there though. The brute force route does involve sending 2 battleships, either normal battleships or aviation battleships, an aviation cruiser, and 3 destroyers. So that could work, but node E, well, you still have 3 destroyers on that kind of route, so your destroyers are still the biggest liability there. Another recommended fleet composition is an AV, or you can have Akitsmaru, and then a heavy cruiser or heavy aviation cruisers, a light cruiser, and then 3 destroyers, which you can supposedly take the fastest route, and supposedly you can have, I guess, your AVs from a midget sub, or if you take it, they didn't use Akubuma, you know what I mean. She can take out midget subs. But now we have the boss here, Abukuma. There we go. I don't know why I had such a hard time saying her name at that moment. Abukuma. And yeah, but the boss is the I can't actually pronounce it, but it's the something Hime, the Lycoris Hime, or whatever you want to call. I can't pronounce it at all. So you're gonna about to see my seaplane bombers are absolutely no help at all here. And they are pretty much ripped. On a side note, one time I did manage to shoot down all the boss's bombers, so it is potential for you to do that. Though you can't really rely on that because that's pretty much never gonna happen. So you can see here, this is pretty much the boss. Your biggest threat is the boss and her 2 battleships. Everything else is not really a threat. The problem is that your boss, the enemy battleships have artillery spotting, so you're not gonna have a good time there, and the boss herself is gonna be very deadly. And unless you can knock her down to medium damage in the daytime, she's probably gonna get 2 hits off. And then, so pretty much what you have to hope for on the boss is that your aviation cruisers can survive the night battle, and some destroyers make it survive the night battle so they can take out like the battleships or their destroyers. So your aviation cruiser can actually take out the boss in night battle. And you can see there, Mogami's done, Suzuya, well, she might not even attack the boss at this rate, because this is, you can see here, we got 4 enemies still alive, and only 3 of them are making it to night battle, and then Suzuya gets torpedoed. So you can see here, the boss is a bit of a pain, and by a bit, I mean quite a pain, because E-5, it's part 1 of a 3-part hell. So Akitsuki, she does, you know, whatever, and then Shimakaze is ripped. And that's pretty much the first go at the boss for you. It's not impossible to S rank, but it can be pretty luck based. Your air-based squadrons gotta get some good hits off. Your boss support also has to get some good hits off. And then you gotta get lucky in day battle to not get screwed over. So you can see there, it's not exactly the easiest thing to deal with. So you can see here, bring in both my land bombers and also the best torpedo bombers I have that can actually has a range of 6 to actually reach the boss. One thing to make sure of is to make sure all your planes have enough range to make it to the actual target you want to hit, because otherwise they're not gonna go there. I think you can still target the boss if you have like a land-based bomber, because the land-based bomber can reach it, but if the other ones can't reach it, that just means they're not gonna be there. So don't think because you can select it means you can actually, all your planes will actually go there. So we've seen this known before, it's a steady standard. You can see here, I don't think formations, I'm not sure if they changed, but they I did experiment a bit on trying to get the final kill. One thing, Kasumi has actually, with her, since she has the lowest armor and lowest HP, she gets knocked to heavy damage a lot. She is the biggest liability of all the destroyers. So I tried putting her in the flagship position once, but then Akitsuki got hit her instead. So I just switched the backs and hope Kasumi can just get dodge. And that's arguably better, because Akitsuki, since she's lower level, she's not gonna dodge as well, even though she has more health and a slightly more armor, but not significantly to make a difference. So Kasumi for me was pretty much the biggest liability for this. And then once again, you get air raids here. So another thing to note that is equipment. I also so since the boss is pretty much, you're gonna be hoping for a night battle and your heavy aviation cruiser do massive damage. So for my destroyers, I equipped them with a searchlight and star shell, and one of them did keep their WG-42s, but the other 2 I sent their WG-42s to Suzuya and Mogami. Akitsuki still has standard AA cutting equipment though, with an air radar and the 2 guns. So from there on though, it's pretty much hoping your route support kicks in and knocks down every threat, and you make it to the boss in relatively good condition. Because the thing to notice is that on the final kill, there's really not any difference at all. Everything is pretty much identical when you're on the final phase. So you pretty much just have to hope you get a kill on the final phase, which is just pretty much luck dependent, because there's really not much you can do to maximize your chances other than the things you've already been doing. Switching your equipment, as I said, will probably help, but it's really dependent on can you get lucky. So, thankfully though, since it's a single fleet, your resources, for your buckets, will hopefully not take too big of a hit, because you'll probably be retreating more often than not. Instead of losing like 5 of them at the boss, so you end up using 5 buckets instead. So buckets shouldn't be too big a thing, but since you're using route support and boss support, your other resources honestly will probably take some hits, and since your land-based squadrons are going to be on fighting the boss and nobody's going to defend the base, your bauxite is also probably not going to be going that well either. So resources for E5, I would say it's somewhat intensive, except for buckets. Buckets really, you shouldn't really use that many of them, unless depending on how often you reach the boss. So it's really, arguably E5 you can say is relatively simple, because you just do the same thing over and over again and hope you get lucky. There's not much you can do, not much calculations or thinking that's really required, because it's really just run standard way to do it. One thing to consider is what aviation cruisers you can use, because you arguably a mistake I probably could say I made is that looking at E6, I probably didn't need aviation cruisers. I didn't really need to save Tone and Chikuma for this, so I could have used Suzuya and Mogami in E2 and E3 instead, and then I could have sent Tone and Chikuma on E5, because they're a lot higher level compared to Mogami and Suzuya. They're like level 80s, and they're also stronger, I think. So that's probably one mistake I had. So one thing to consider is, and if you haven't done E2 yet either, is to consider: do you really need aviation cruiser here? Do you really need to conserve your aviation cruisers? Because if you decide afterwards you didn't, well, it's too late, because you already beat E2 and you can't really go back and use them there because you already won. So in the end, you might just end up wasting your aviation cruisers by not sending them out because you think you're saving them. Then you realize you didn't really have to save them in the first place. That's a mistake I made, because, well, people kept saying you need 6 aviation cruisers, but clearly you don't really need it. Oh yeah, other than that though, pretty much making sure you have the correct ships you need. So one other thing to consider is that since you might need 4 destroyers for this, you also do need some destroyers for E6 and all the other maps. So for this event in whole, you do benefit from a lot of planning, and I mainly plan which destroyers go where and which destroyers go elsewhere. So yeah, you can see here boss doesn't really change on this final kill. I unfortunately just clicked through her dialogue, so you didn't get to really read as you can see what she says there, but not big loss here. So you can see my land-based squadron doing some work here. They did about 100 something so damage to the boss and sink the destroyer. I wanted to know if you're using Kanko Führer, the battle report doesn't actually take into consideration the damage caused by air-based squadron. So basically, for that destroyer in the bottom, it would say it still has 46 HP, even though it's dead. So you can see here, it's well, this run, I would say, is not the highest chance I had for killing the boss. In fact, the first time I made it to the boss on the final kill, what happened was pretty much Mogami and Tsuchiya, they both made it to the night battle with one in medium damage or better. I had 2 destroyers, also fine. The other 2 were heavy damage. All the battleships and destroyers were sunk. The boss had like 200 so HP left. I'm thinking. The transport was still alive though, but it was looking good though. Heavy aviation cruisers still up. Destroyers can take on the transport. They'll go to night battle. When the destroyer target the transport, the boss knocks Mogami to heavy damage and Sushi attacks the transport. So yeah, that was really rage-inducing. And you can see here this run, it doesn't look as good, right? Because you got 2. This time around, we got 2 battleships. The boss has almost 400 HP. So you think there's no way this could work. I mean, you can see here, gonna send up my star shells, illuminate the battlefield. Got searchlight going, and then Akitsuki here. She's gonna actually sink that battleship. And searchlight not once has actually attracted the boss's attack, so not sure how much use it really was. And then Tsuchiya, boom, shakalaka. So on hard, I'm not sure about medium or easy, but on hard, the minimum amount of kills you need is 6. And all you know is, once again, interrupting, because she's got probably the like 1. And Moga and Tsuchiya are very deservedly deserves MVP for this. And potential rare drops from E-5 is Roma. And I guess Amagi is also what you can consider one. Kawakaze, maybe, but for me, Roma is pretty much the one that I don't have, and so also on all difficulties, you get type 1 land-based land attacker. On hard, you get 7 renovation materials, so that's the one that lets you equip an extra slot for a repair team on anyone. You get a type 3 Vader and Raiden on hard, and also Pola on all difficulties.
Buongiorno. チャラ級獣人の3番艦ポーラです。何にでも挑戦したいお年頃頑張ります。
So yeah, Pola is another Italian heavy cruiser. So I was saying, on hard, you get 7 renovation materials, as I said, for the adding pretty much an extra slot for a repair team or something. You get the Type 3 Fader Hien from the 244th Air Combat Group for, I believe it's probably Interceptor. You get Raiden, which I think is also an Interceptor maybe. I'm not sure about which type of planes they are. On medium, you only get the Type 3 Fader Hien and not the Special Air Combat Group and Raiden. And on easy, you get the Type 3 Fader Hien. And by Raiden, I do not mean the guy with the high frequency blade that cuts everything in half and fights guys with nano machines, not that Raiden. You can see here, yeah, this was my support plate. And this was the E5. E6, probably not to see for a while. I did E6 is gonna take me a while to actually think about and plan out, because I haven't actually started that yet. So, but hopefully you'll see E6 sometime next week. I'll see you guys then, and good night.